Hey everyone, it's Violet Vixen. This is my first video for this channel, and I've decided to do my own personal paranormal stories until I have collected enough stories to do other people's stories, I guess you could say. So this is called First Room on the Left. And these are all my personal stories, and they are true, and whether they be exciting or not that intriguing, they are true nonetheless. So, let's get into it. First room on the left. I was a young child around the time this happened. In my room, I had a daybed. At this age, I did not have a TV in my room, so at night it was quite dark, but I was allowed to keep the hallway light on. My parents live in a 60s ranch-style home, so all the bedrooms were on one side of the house, and the other rooms were on the opposite. My dad to this day works a rotating shift, such as nights 1 week, days the next, and a week off for relief week. As a child, and to this day, it is hard to keep up with what week his shift may be. My dad will oftentimes fall asleep on the couch in his man cave kind of den on the opposite end and backside of the house, watching a movie or show, because he is a bit of a film buff. I say all this to further explain my story. One night I was trying to soothe myself to sleep when I started to hear the TV in the man cave. I assumed my dad had fallen asleep again watching TV and had forgotten to turn the volume low. My mom is a very light sleeper, and I figured if I could hear it, then so could my mom. To prevent my mom from having to get out of bed, I went to wake my dad to turn the TV down. I tiptoed down the hallway into the dining room, the room right before the den. I immediately noticed there were no flashes of light that typically happen while watching television. I thought it strange, but continued on to the den. I rounded the corner to the room and started to whisper, "Dad." As I peered around the doorway to look at the TV, I noticed it was off, and of course there was obviously no sound. I whipped my head around to look at my dad sleeping, assuming he turned it off before I got over here to say something. But to my surprise, my dad wasn't there. I immediately go to my mom's bedroom door and knock. She quickly answers, "Yes? Is Dad home?" I said. "No, he's at work," she says, frustrated from waking her. An eerie feeling creeps over me. Needless to say, I didn't sleep well, as this isn't the first time I've heard or seen things from this room. My room. The same room not long before this night I had seen my shadow on the wall stay sitting up looking my direction while I had already laid down. I tried to not acknowledge it. I simply chose to just turn over and do what any child would do in a horror film, pull the blanket over my head and squeeze my eyes as tight as I could and slowly drift off to sleep, but to still awaken to the frightening remembrance of it. Trailer hauntings. My husband and I were 21 when we lived around the Jacksonville, North Carolina area. We had just had our first daughter when we decided to rent this trailer. My husband is not one to believe in a whole lot of paranormal. We both agreed, though, that this place definitely had something going on. Shortly after moving in, we noticed lights flickering and turning on and off often, which could be chalked up to electrical problems due to flooding damaged previously to us moving there. Then before too much longer, our dishwasher also started to cut on and off by itself. A deep freezer full of food had gone to waste because it cut off somehow without us noticing. We would walk in and out of our living room and our brand new television would turn off and on. All of this seemed strange to us, of course, but we just believed it to be electrical problems. My husband was working out in the yard one day when he noticed an opening to our crawl space under the mobile home and saw all sorts of different things, but in particular a tiny Buzz Lightyear toy lying on the ground. The opening was very small to grab anything or crawl into. You also probably wouldn't want to either on account of the black widows and probable brown recluses or even snakes hiding out there. A few days after, my husband Tyler was outside and happened to look over at that little crawl space. He calls for me to come outside and motions me to come look at it. The little Buzz Lightyear was standing up like an action figure on the cinder block right at the opening, away from where it was laying on the ground previously and out of arm's reach. I accused him of somehow moving it himself, although I knew it was near impossible for him to do, let alone within the few minutes he was out there. A few weeks later, our daughter was playing on her playmat we had on the floor for her. She was still too little to do much with it because she still wasn't even able to roll around. Our small beagle mix was in the living room with her just laying on the floor. While she and the dog were laying there, she was starting to doze off, so we decided to step outside. We just stepped outside and heard several loud foot stomps go through the living room, almost like someone was purposefully trying to make noise while they walked. Immediately, our dog started barking and our baby started to cry. We bolted inside, but everything was as it was before. But with a very upset baby and a startled dog, that one still unnerves me to this day, and she just turned 6. Another few weeks had passed since that incident, and we were all still settled in our beds, sleeping. The baby asleep in her room, in her crib. The husband and I in our bed, and the dog sleeping at the foot of the bed. All of a sudden, we were startled awake by our dog baying and then growling loudly at our bathroom door, opened, and the light still shut off. My husband investigated, and there wasn't a thing to be found. Of course. We lived there less than a year and moved as soon as possible, but the memories of that horrific place in the middle of nowhere still are something I'll never forget. Quaint little 40s house. Our daughter at this time was 3 years old. We were renting a newly renovated 40s house just outside of Shelby, North Carolina, in a small little country town. It was owned by my boss at the time, and he gave us a great price for rent to stay there. A little backstory on the house was that an old man had previously died in the home and needed quite a lot of repairs. My boss got it for a great price, but a lot of work went into it. He found a ton of old stuff he could sell. There was an infestation of fleas and water damage from the old water heater. Once repaired and renovated, he couldn't tell anything had been wrong with it. Nothing had happened there in particular before what I'm about to tell you, but just strange kind of aggravating things. Our light bulbs and batteries would die constantly, and the electric bill was through the roof, even though the windows were brand new and the returns were closed off, because we had a brand new AC unit. I even tried putting blankets over the windows, with no help to the bill at all. One night, we were headed home, and my daughter asked where we were going, and I replied, "To our house." She said, "Oh, the place where the man lives." My husband and I glanced at each other quickly, with weirded out looks. "What man?" I said. She replies, "The one that lives in my room." "What man? What does he look like?" "Well, he has black skin and blue eyes, has a beard, and wears a man dress." I sat there for a second trying to think of a reply, and she says, "He's the man that protects me from the bad guys." I try to ask her more questions, but she trails off talking about other random things, as if it were completely normal what she had just told us. I was leery putting her to bed that night, but she is just in the room across from ours, and we always leave the doors open, so I can hear her through the night if she gets up. The next day we went to my boss, landlord's house, to tell him what she had told us. He seemed a little freaked out by it, honestly. That is when we learned about the old man dying in the house, and something else. Before we had moved in, he had brought a friend over to look at the property. They had 2 dogs with them, and the dogs wouldn't go near her room. There was a laundry room that used to be the old kitchen between her room and the dining room. They just stared at the laundry room, facing the direction of her room, and kept barking. He said it freaked him out a little, but decided it was just a strange thing that happened and thought no more of it. My daughter at the time had trouble distinguishing colors sometimes, so black could really be brown or blue just a light color. Well, having said that, my boss's wife went and grabbed a picture that was supposed to resemble what Jesus looked like and showed it to her without saying anything. But who's this? "That's the man that lives in my room and protects me from bad guys. That's Jesus." We were all stunned. We were not attending church regularly at this time, so it really surprised us. After that, we didn't hear anything else about it, or hear or see anything strange other than the same issues with the light bulbs, batteries, and electric bill. It has been a couple years since that time, and he is no longer my boss or landlord. However, my brother still works pretty close with him. From what my brother told me, and he's a no-nonsense kind of person when it comes to things like this, but he said that since we had moved out, my old boss, his daughter and granddaughter moved in. His granddaughter kept refusing to sleep in her bedroom, the room my daughter slept in, because the bad guys that are in there. She is about the same age as my daughter. It instantly gave me goosebumps hearing that. My old boss ended up getting someone to do a cleaning of the house with burning sage and whatnot, and his granddaughter now sleeps in that room. The whole thing is just crazy to me, but I definitely need to hear an update from him and see if the house is still doing well. No weird happenings or anything. My daughter doesn't remember telling me those things, but I am glad. We have since moved on to a much newer house with no past history. I hope y'all enjoyed those stories. I know they were nothing super out of the ordinary or super scary, but at the time they did freak us out a little bit, and I hope that I can come up with some more stories to tell y'all, if not some creepypastas or some true stories that I can find. If there is anything that you would like me to talk about or narrate or come up with stories for, just let me know down in the comments, and I hope y'all enjoy this. And these were all my personal stories and as true as I remember them, and I hope to do another video soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.